There's a conversation that happens every time seriously knowledgeable Australian car people get together, and it usually goes Holden, Ford, and then, after a pause, Chrysler. That pause is what this video is about. Chrysler Australia didn't just build cars. Over roughly 15 years, they produced some of the most technically ambitious, most hotly contested, and most underappreciated performance machines this country has ever seen. Today we're counting down 10 greatest Valiants ever made. Some are well known. A couple will surprise you. And the car at number 1 is, by any honest measure, one of the greatest production cars ever built on Australian soil. Number 10. Chrysler AP6 Valiant. To understand what the Valiant became, you need to understand where it started, and the AP6 is the right place to begin. By 1965, Chrysler had been selling Valiants in Australia for a few years, but the AP6 was different. Where earlier models were essentially American cars with minimal local input, the AP6 was substantially re-engineered for Australian conditions. Local engineers had real involvement, and you could feel the difference behind the wheel. Buyers had a choice of 2 slant-6 engines, a 170 cubic inch unit for those who prioritized economy, or the more popular 225 cubic inch, which sat just under 3.7 liters and produced around 140 horsepower. Neither was a fire breather, but both were smooth, durable, and more responsive than the numbers suggest. The Torque Flight automatic that most buyers chose was widely regarded as one of the finest gearboxes of its era, nearly indestructible. The AP6 isn't the most exciting car on this list, but it built the foundation, the engineering culture, and local identity that made everything above it possible. Clean, original examples now sit above $30,000, not because they're fast, because they matter. And Chrysler wasted no time building on that foundation. Number 9. Chrysler VK Valiant Regal 770-318 V8. By 1975, the world had changed around the Valiant in ways Chrysler couldn't fully control. Fuel prices were climbing. Emissions regulations were reshaping what manufacturers could build. The freewheeling confidence of the late 60s was firmly in the rearview mirror, which makes the VK Valiant Regal 770 all the more interesting. Rather than retreating to economy spec safety, Chrysler chose to send the big car Valiant out, genuine dignity, fitted with the 318 cubic inch V8, just over 5 liters. Producing around 160 horsepower through the Torque Flight automatic. The 770 was the top of the Valiant passenger car range. Deep carpet, full instrumentation, a sense of occasion the smaller engined models couldn't match, effortlessly composed on long highway runs, the kind of car that covered ground without drama. Survivors in original condition are genuinely scarce. Good examples trade north of $45,000 today. The VK 770 is a reminder that Chrysler could do refinement just as well as aggression. From here on, though, this list leans firmly toward aggression. Number 8. Chrysler Valiant Pacer. But this is where things get genuinely interesting. In 1969, while other manufacturers were adding chrome and equipment to their performance variants, Chrysler went the opposite direction. Stripped the Valiant back to its essentials, fit a properly tuned engine, keep the price accessible, and let the car do the talking. And Chrysler delivered on every part of it. The engine was Chrysler's 245 cubic inch Hemi 6, just under 4 liters, in a state of tune that produced around 175 horsepower, backed by a floor-mounted 3-speed manual, uncommon in an Australian family sedan in 1969. The suspension was firmed up, the rear axle ratio chosen for acceleration. Factory colors included wild yellow and Hemi orange. These were cars that did not attempt to blend into traffic. Only around 1,500 were built across the Hemi Pacer series. A well-presented Pacer today finds a buyer at $70,000 without much difficulty, and the best examples push comfortably past that. The Pacer showed Chrysler understood performance. What came next showed they were prepared to take it seriously. Number 7. Chrysler VE Valiant VIP. And this one catches a lot of people off guard when they see it on a list like this. While Chrysler was building sportier Valiants for younger buyers, they were simultaneously chasing a completely different customer, someone who wanted an Australian executive car that didn't need a European badge to justify its price. This Valiant was built for exactly that person. Introduced in 1967, this one in 318 specification carried just over 5 liters of V8, producing approximately 210 horsepower. The interior matched the ambition. Deep carpet, folding bench seats, standard equipment that competitors offered as cost options. On a long highway run, it was effortless in a way the 6-cylinder models simply couldn't replicate. Survivors are rare in the way all well-used family cars from this era are. Most were driven until they weren't, and not treated as collectibles until it was too late. The best examples sit between $50,000 and $80,000 today. Among those who know their Chrysler Australia history, the VIP 318 carries a quiet prestige that the faster cars sometimes overshadow. Now, we're moving into Charger territory, and for most Valiant enthusiasts, this is where the real conversation starts. Number 6. Chrysler VH Valiant Charger 770. If you were paying attention to Australian cars in 1971, the arrival of the Charger was not something you missed. While most local manufacturers were still working within conservative design briefs, Chrysler unveiled something that looked like it came from a different conversation entirely. Low, wide, a fastback roofline with a short wheelbase. Proportions unlike anything else wearing an Australian badge at the time. The styling studio had done something bold, and the market noticed immediately. The 770 was mid-tier specification. The 265 cubic inch Hemi 6-cylinder in 770 tune made around 185 horsepower, and in a car with the Charger's aerodynamics and modest curb weight that felt like considerably more than the number suggests. Bucket seats, center console, proper instrumentation, a driver's car that didn't pretend to be otherwise. Good original ones trade north of $90,000. This Charger is the entry point into this world, and from here on the list, the cars get progressively rarer, progressively more significant, and progressively more serious. Number 5. Chrysler CL Valiant Charger 770. There's something genuinely affecting about this car when you understand what it represents. The CL Valiant Charger was the last of the line. By 1976, the forces working against it were considerable. Fuel costs, tightening regulations, commercial pressure on Chrysler Australia. The muscle car moment had passed, and yet the CL Charger was still, by any objective standard, a fine car. The 265 Hemi 6 in 770 specification, around 175 horsepower, still paired with a 4-speed manual for those who wanted it. What makes the CL 770 matter isn't outright performance, it's historical closure. When the last one came off the line in 1978, something ended quietly in a factory in South Australia, and not nearly enough people were paying attention at the time. Collectors have been paying attention since. Well-preserved ones now trade between $75,000 and $115,000. The most emotionally resonant Charger on this list, even if not the fastest. And from here, we're in a different category entirely. Number 4. Chrysler VF Valiant Regal 770 Hardtop 360. Now we're getting into territory that requires a different kind of attention. This Valiant Regal Hardtop was unusual by Australian standards, deliberately so. Chrysler introduced a pillarless 2-door body to the local Valiant range at a time when most manufacturers here wouldn't entertain the idea. The result was a car that looked significantly more dramatic than anything else with a local badge, and when you dropped both windows, offered something close to a convertible experience that no sedan could replicate. In 360 cubic inch V8 specification, just under 6 liters, approximately 245 horsepower. The hardtop was the most powerful Valiant Chrysler had offered to that point. Grand touring rather than strip racing. Strong, composed, and built for distance. The torque flight matched it perfectly. Hardtop 360 examples are genuinely rare today. Production numbers were always modest. When an authenticated example surfaces at auction, it regularly exceeds $130,000, with exceptional examples pushing well beyond. A car that was ahead of its time, and the market has finally caught up with it. Number 3. Chrysler Valiant Charger RT 770-340. When Chrysler Australia wanted to go racing, properly racing, they needed a homologation car, sold to the public, buildable in sufficient numbers, fast enough to compete at the front of the field at Bathurst. And this Charger was that car. Under the bonnet, Chrysler's 340 cubic inch V8, approximately 5.6 liters, around 275 horsepower, 4-speed close ratio manual as standard, race-informed suspension, upgraded brake. This was not a car that hinted at performance, it stated it directly. On circuit, it was competitive in ways that rearranged expectations. At Bathurst, it proved itself against more expensive machinery. On the street, it was fast, communicative, and entirely honest about what it was for. Numbers produced were strictly limited. Genuine RT 340 Chargers trade well above $180,000 today, with the best examples past $200,000. The RT 340 represents the moment Chrysler stopped hinting and delivered without reservation. What came next took that commitment and applied it with a precision the RT could only point toward. Number 2. Chrysler Valiant Charger E38. The E38 exists in a space very few Australian production cars have ever reached, where engineering ambition and competitive necessity met at the right moment and produced something extraordinary. The engine was Chrysler's 265 cubic inch Hemi-6, but in a state of tune bearing almost no resemblance to the standard unit. The result? Approximately 302 horsepower from a 4.3-liter six-cylinder engine in 1971. In a car weighing barely over a ton, the power-to-weight ratio could embarrass machinery at twice the price. On circuit, the E38 validated every decision. It was competitive at Bathurst. It beat cars that had no business being beaten by a six-cylinder sedan. On the street, it was precise, fast, and honest. The kind of car that distinguished genuine performance from cars that merely look the part. Authenticated E38 regularly exceed $350,000 at auction. There are buyers waiting for them. And above even this, there is one car. One car that took everything the E38 represented and pushed it past the point where Australia had ever been before. Number 1. Chrysler Valiant Charger E49. The E49 was built in 1972 with one clearly stated objective: to be the fastest six-cylinder production car in the world. When it was finished, that's exactly what it was. The 265 cubic inch Hemi-6 was developed into something bearing almost no resemblance to the standard unit. 3 twin-choke Webers, a competition cylinder head, a purpose-ground camshaft. The result was 302 horsepower. The Holden Monaro GTS of the same year, with its 5-liter V8, made 250. The E49 surpassed it with a 6-cylinder engine displacing 4.3 liters. 0 to 60 in 6.1 seconds. The standing quarter in the low 14s. At Bathurst, it competed at the front against larger, more powerful machinery and refused to yield. The 6-cylinder Charger beating V8s at Mount Panorama was not a theory. It happened in front of crowds who still talk about it. Chrysler built 149 of them. Authenticated examples have sold for well over $500,000, with the best crossing $600,000. Each time one surfaces, there are more buyers than there is car. It remains the standard against which every other Valiant is measured, and it still measures up. 10 Valiants, each one doing something worth remembering, whether that was setting a world record, pioneering a body style, or simply being a better car than anyone expected Chrysler Australia to build. If one of these means something to you personally, drop it in the comments. If you got something out of this, subscribing keeps the channel going. Until then, look after these cars. There aren't many left.